All right, guys. The one and only Ivan. The next morning, I watch Mac's car slam to a halt in the parking lot. He leaps out. He stares at the billboard and his jaw is open. He doesn't move for a long time. Mad human. A mad gorilla is loud, but a mad human can be loud too, especially when he is throwing chairs and turning over tables and breaking the cotton candy machine. Phone call. Mac is kicking trash cans across the food court when the phone rings. He answers it red faced and sweating. What the? He demands. He glares at me. I don't know what you're, he starts to say, but then he stops to listen. Who? Julia who? He asks. Oh, sure, George's kid. She's the one that called you? More talking. And with the phone to his ear, Matt comes closer to my cage, eyeing me suspiciously. Yeah, he says. He paints, sure. We've been selling his art for quite a while now. There's another long pause. Yeah, absolutely. It was my idea. Mac nods and a smile starts at the corners of his mouth. Ah, photos? No problem. You want to see him in action? Come on down, have a look. We're open 365 days a year. Can't miss us. We're right off I-95. Mac picks up the overturned trash can. Yeah, I think he'll be adding more pictures. It's what do you know, a work in progress. And when the call is done, Mac shakes his head. Impossible, he says. Well, an hour later, a man with a camera comes to take my picture. He is from the local paper, the one Julia called. How about you take one of me with the elephant, Mac suggests. And he drapes his arm around Ruby's back, grinning as the camera clicks. Perfect, the man says. Perfect, Mac agrees. Here's a picture of Mac with Ruby. Next chapter is called A Star Again. A photo of my billboard is in the newspaper. Mac tapes the story onto my window. Each day, more curious people arrive. They park in front of the billboard and they point and shake their heads and they take photos. Then they come into the mall and they buy my paintings. While visitors watch, I dip my hands in fresh buckets of paint and I make pictures for the gift shop and pictures to add to the billboard. Trees with birds, a newborn elephant with glittering eyes, a squirrel, a bluebird, a worm. I even paint Bob so that he'll be on the billboard too. I can tell he likes the picture, although he says I didn't quite capture his distinguished nose. Every afternoon, Mac and George add my new pictures to the billboard. People slow their cars while they work. Drivers honk and wave. My gift shop pictures now cost $65 with a frame. The next chapter is called The Ape Artist. I have new names. People call me Ape Artist and the Primate Picasso. I have visitors from morning till night, and so does Ruby. But nothing's changed for her. Every day at 2, 4, and 7, Ruby plods through the sawdust with Snickers on her back. Every night she has bad dreams. Bob, I say after I've soothed Ruby to sleep with a story. My idea. It isn't working. Bob opens one eye. Be patient. I'm tired of being patient, I say. Interview. This evening, a man and a woman come to interview Mac and also Julia and George. The man has a large and heavy camera perched on his shoulder. He films me as I make my pictures. He films Ruby in her cage with her foot roped to the bolt on the floor. Mind if I look around? He asks. Mac waves a hand. Be my guest. While Mac and the woman talk, the cameraman walks through the mall. He pans his camera right and left, up and down. When his eyes fall on the claw stick, he stops. He trains his camera on the gleaming blade, and then he moves on. The next chapter is called The Early News. Mac turns on the TV. We are on the early news at 5 o'clock. Bob says, don't let it go to my head. There we all are, Mac and Ruby and me, George and Julia, the billboard, the mall, the ring, and the claw stick. Next chapter is called Signs on Sticks. In the morning, several people gather in the parking lot, and they're carrying signs on sticks. The signs have words and pictures on them. One has a drawing of a gorilla cradling a baby elephant. I wish I could read. The next chapter is called Protesters. And here's a picture to help you to be able to visualize what that looks like. You've probably seen that before, where people are holding up signs with something that they believe in. It's called protesting. More people with signs come today, and they want Ruby to be free. Some of them even want Mac to shut down the mall. In the evening, George and Mac talk about them. Mac says they're protesting the wrong guy. He says they're going to ruin everything. He says, thanks for nothing, George. Mac stomps off, and George, holding his mop, watches him leave, and he rubs his eyes and he looks worried. Dad, Julia says, looking up from her homework, you know what my favorite sign was? George says. Which one? The one that said, elephants are people too. George just gives her a tired smile, and then he goes back to work. His mop moves across the empty food court like a giant brush, painting a picture that no one will ever see. The next chapter is called Check Marks. A tall man with a clipboard and a pencil comes to visit. He says he is here to inspect the property. He doesn't say much more, but he makes many check marks on his paper. He looks at my floor. Check. He examines Ruby's hay. Check. He eyes our water bowls. Check. Mac watches him, scowling. Bob is outside, hiding near the dumpster. He does not want to be a check mark. The next chapter is called Free Ruby. Every day there are more protesters and cameras with bright lights. Sometimes the people carrying signs shout, Free Ruby! Free Ruby! Ivan? Ruby asks. Why are those people yelling my name? Are they mad at me? Oh, they're mad, I say. But not at you, Ruby. A week later, the inspecting man comes back with a friend, a woman with smart, dark eyes like my mother's. She has a white coat on and she smells like lobelia blossoms, flower blossoms. Oops. Her hair is thick and brown, the color of a rotten branch teeming with luscious ants. She watches me for a long time. Then she watches Ruby. She talks to the man, and they both talk to Mac, and the man gives Mac a sheet of paper. Mac covers his face, and he goes to the office, and he slams the door. The next chapter is called New Box. Something strange is happening. The white-coated woman is back with other humans, and they place a large box in the center of the ring. It's ruby-sized. And suddenly I know why the woman is here. She's here to take away Ruby. The next chapter is called Training. The woman leads Ruby to the box, and she places an apple inside. Good girl, Ruby, she says kindly. Don't be afraid. Ruby inspects the box with her trunk, and the woman makes a clicking sound with a little piece of metal she's holding in her hand. She gives Ruby a piece of carrot. Each time Ruby touches the box, she gets a click and a treat. Why is she making that clicking noise? I ask Bob. Oh, they do that to dogs all the time, Bob says. And I can tell he doesn't approve. It's called clicker training. They want Ruby to associate the noise with the treat. And when she does something they want, they make that noise. Great job, Ruby, the woman says. You're a quick study. Well, after many clicks and carrots, she takes Ruby back to her cage. Why is that lady giving me carrots when I touch that box? Ruby asks me. I think she wants you to go inside, I explain. But there's nothing inside, Ruby says, except an apple. Inside that box is the way out. And Ruby tilts her head. I don't get it. See the picture of the red giraffe on the box? I think the lady is from the zoo, Ruby. I think she's getting ready to take you there. I wait for Ruby to trumpet with joy. But instead, she just stares at the box in silence. I'm not sure you understand. That box might be taking you to a place where there's other elephants, Ruby. A place with more room and humans who care about you. But even as I say these words, I remember with a shudder the last box I was in. I don't want a zoo, Ruby says. I want you and Bob and Julia. This is my home. No, Ruby, I say. This is your prison. The next chapter is called Poking and Prodding. The lady comes again, and she brings an animal doctor with an awful smell and a dangerous-looking bag. He spends an hour with Ruby poking and prodding. He looks at her eyes, her feet, her trunk. When he's done with Ruby, he enters my cage. I wish I could hide under Not Tag, like Bob. Instead, I do a nice loud chest beat, and after a moment, the doctor retreats. Well, we're going to need to put this one under, he says. I'm not sure what he means, but I strut around my cage feeling victorious anyway. The next chapter is called No Painting. No one asks me to paint today. No one asks Ruby to perform. There are no shows, no visitors, unless you count the protesters. And Mac stays in his office all day. Next chapter is called More Boxes. I wake up from a long morning nap. Bob is on my belly, but he isn't asleep. He's watching the ring where four men are placing a large metal box. It's me-sized. What's that? I ask, still blurry from sleep. Bob nuzzles my chin. I believe that box is for you, my friend. I'm not sure what he means. Me? They brought in a bunch of boxes while you were sleeping. Looks to me like they're taking the whole lot of you. Even Thelma. Taking, I repeat. Taking us where? Well, some to the zoo, probably. Others to an animal shelter where humans will try to find them homes. And Bob shakes himself. So I guess all things must come to an end, huh? His voice is bright, but his eyes are far away and sad. I'm going to miss your stomach, big guy. And Bob shuts his eyes, and he makes an odd noise in his throat. But what about you, I ask. Well, I can't tell if Bob's just pretending to sleep, but he doesn't answer. I gaze at the huge shadowy box, and suddenly I understand how Ruby feels. I I don't want to go into that box. The last time I was in a box, my sister died. Next chapter is goodbye. When George and Julia come that night, George doesn't get his mop or his broom. He gathers up his tools and belongings while Julia runs to my cage. "This is my last night, Ivan," she says, and she presses her palms onto my glass. "Mac fired my dad," and tears slip down her cheeks. "But the zoo lady said maybe they'll have an opening there in a while, cleaning cages and stuff." I walk to the glass that separates us, and I put my hand where Julia's is, palm to palm, finger to finger. My hand is bigger, but they're not so different. "I'm going to miss you," Julia says, "and Ruby and Bob. But this is a really good thing. Really it is. You deserve a different life." I stare into her dark eyes, and I wish I had words for her. Sniffling, she goes to Ruby's cage. "Have a good life, Ruby," she says. Ruby makes a little rumbling sound. She puts her trunk between the bars and touches Julia's shoulder. "Where is Bob anyway?" Julia asks, and she looks around under the tables and in my cage by the trash can. "Dad, have you seen Bob?" "Bob? No," George says. Julia's brow is wrinkled. "What is going to happen to him, Dad? What if Max shuts down the whole mall?" "Oh, he says he's going to try to keep it open without the animals," George says, and he stuffs his hands in his pockets. "I'm worried about Bob too, but he's a survivor." "You know what, Dad?" Julia gets a gleam in her eye. "Bob could live with us. Mom loves dogs, and he could keep her company, and Jules, I'm not even sure I have a job yet. I may not even be able to feed you, let alone some mutt." But my dog walking money?" "No, sorry, Jules." "I understand." And she starts to leave, and then she runs back to my cage. "I almost forgot. This is for you, Ivan." And she slips a piece of paper into my cage. It's a drawing of Ruby and me. And we're eating yogurt raisins. And Ruby is playing with another baby elephant. And I'm holding hands with a lovely gorilla. She has red lips and a flower in her hair. I look, as I always do in Julia's pictures, like an elegant fellow. But something is different about this drawing. In this picture, I'm smiling. Ivan. See you tomorrow.